Okay, I'm gonna get started now. As I said, this is very interactive. I had a few more people joined since I logged on, so I think it's a good time to start. Now, let's get stuck in. I'm gonna first of all say something that's pretty obvious, but sometimes needs reminding. The human body is very, very adaptive. Okay, now that's something that we have to really remember. So let's say that you're living in a really cold place. Let's say Eskimos, and they tend to have thicker skin because they adapt to the cold environment. People who live in very hot environments, they tend to have a lot of melanin to adapt to that environment. And why am I talking about that? Because the same is true when it comes to actually lifestyle, how we physically look. So if you stay at home, eat loads of food, and don't exercise, don't move about a bit, your body adapts to that. So it's going to be harder if that's what your lifestyle is at the moment to get into the habit of going to the gym, exercising, moving about, simply because your body, up until that point, has adapted to that kind of lifestyle. And the opposite's true as well. If you're constantly moving about a bit, going to the gym, exercising, your body is going to adapt to that as well by obviously burning off fat, growing muscle, becoming more flexible, increasing blood flow, things like that. So that's the first thing I'm going to mention. It's very important to understand that before we go any further. So what happens if you just stay at home, eat crap all day and watch TV? What's going to be the end result of that? If no one says anything, I'm going to pick on people. Sorry?
Suppresses your mood?
Yep, definitely. Makes you more depressed, more kind of a little bit. I don't like the word lazy, but it does kind of make you a little bit more lazy when you do that. What else?
You get fat.
Yep, you'll gain weight. And not the good weight, the bad weight. I say the good weight is like most people want to gain a little bit of muscle, but you tend to lose muscle, gain more fat when you don't move about as much and you watch TV all day, especially if you're eating crap. I say crap. What is crap? That is like sugary rich foods, high caloric foods, things like that. You tend to crave that more when you're not moving about as much. So, that's another thing that tends to happen. Anything else? Can you all see the screen, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the answers are all on the screens. But you don't feel that motivated. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, well, how was the Christmas, by the way? Did you eat a lot of turkey, a lot of mince pies, things like that? Drink a lot of wine, get drunk, wake up late?
Yeah. Some of that.
Yeah. So the net result of that is that kind of sluggish feeling. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So that tends to be what most people experience during the Christmas period, and obviously, you at the end of that, you don't tend to feel that great. Am I right? Maybe a little bit sluggish, a little bit lazy. Yeah. Now the opposite's true as well. Let's say that you go to the gym on a regular basis, you eat loads of healthy foods, and you keep active throughout the day. How do you tend to feel after doing that for, let's say, 5 or 6 weeks?
Energized?
Yep, energized, totally. Your mood improves, doesn't it?
Higher self-esteem as well. It's Kay here.
Absolutely. Yep, you tend to get more confidence. Yep. Anything else?
There's less tiredness.
Yep, less tiredness.
You sleep better.
So you tend to feel better about yourself, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Excellent. Now there's a very well, not that famous, but there's a professor / neuroscientist by the name of Mark Tonopolsky, and he famously said that if exercise was a drug, it would be literally the most valuable one ever developed, because there's so many benefits to exercising. And before I cover those benefits, I'm going to mention another doctor, very famous doctor called Dr. Kenneth Cooper. He basically popularized the idea of exercising and relating it to exercise and relieving a lot of medical conditions like diabetes and high blood pressure and things like that. Back in the day, he was the one who actually popularized the idea of exercising regularly as a way of treating many common medical disorders. And he famously said that we do not stop exercising because we get old, but rather we get old because we stop exercising. Now, that's a very interesting point, that is. Okay, because a lot of people, like when I was a personal trainer, a lot of people used to come up to me saying, "Well, I'm too old to exercise. I'm too old to go to the gym." And I'm thinking, well, no, you're never too old to exercise. Okay, we often tell ourselves that sometimes because some people tend to believe that, and that's not a good way to think. So I just wanted to throw that on there. But I think we can all agree that exercise is a good thing, right? All right.
Yeah,
Oh,
definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Now I'm just going to cover 10 benefits of exercise. And when I say exercise, I'm really going to refer to resistance training, which includes weight training. So one of the obvious benefits of exercise / weight training is increased muscle size and increased strength. Now, what's so good about having more muscle size, muscle strength?
You burn more calories when you're stationary.
Yep. So your metabolic rate goes up. Exactly. Yep.
Yes. What?
Hello? Who's that? Hello?
Yeah,
I just
sorry,
heard
John.
some...
I think it's the
Oh,
kids.
Deload. Is that Deload?
Yeah, sorry, mate.
Yeah, cool. That's cool.
I'll try.
Yeah, so your metabolic rate goes up.
Yeah, I'll mute it, mate.
Okay, cool. By the way, I'm recording this, so I just want everyone to aware. Some people, last time I did this talk and I recorded it, a couple of people weren't too happy about it, so I'm just telling you now. If you don't want your face shown, you can always turn the video off. But, sorry, one second, I've got a message. Lost sound. K Core, can you hear me? K Core? I'll get back to it after this. Anyway, yeah, so increased metabolic rate. Any other benefits to exercise, weight training, resistance training? It's all on the screen. Just shout it out.
Improves mood.
Yep, improves mood. Why does it improve mood? Do you know why?
Because it releases endorphins.
Yep, it releases endorphins. It boosts your dopamine levels, and dopamine is excellent for increasing focus, increasing mood, and also it's associated with serotonin release. Anyone heard of serotonin?
Yeah, it's
Yep,
the
serotonin.
mood stabilizer.
Yep, exactly. So for all these reasons, it makes you feel better. Excellent for people who suffer from depression.
Yeah. Okay. What's number 9?
Number 9, sarcopenia. I'm gonna touch on that in a minute.
Okay.
Improves body awareness, balance, and coordination. This is something that a lot of people aren't really that aware of. So basically, the more you exercise, especially when it comes to weight training, it tends to make you a little bit more balanced. So when you're walking, it just tends to make you more. When you're walking, it tends to make you more stable. It increases your core muscles and things like that. It allows obviously for physical change and control of your body shape. So if you wanted, let's say you wanted bigger chest or bigger arm muscles, and you're able to do that simply because with weight training, you can obviously focus on certain areas. So if you wanted to get bigger muscles, for example, in your arms, bigger biceps, you can obviously train your biceps. Now, you can't do that with roller skating. So that's a great thing about weight training. You can be very specific about how you look, where you look. Brett, I think you raised your hand. Brett, you okay?
Yep.
Any questions?
For number 9, what I can add to what you're saying there, my boy is autistic. He has had balance problems all of his life. During lockdown, I was doing some weight training with him and some fitness building work while we had the 6 months of complete lockdown and we were closed in the house. Then I got him out on his bike. And I took a boy that had terrible balance and terrible coordination to a boy that in 1 year's training could ride from Land's End to John O'Groves on his bicycle.
Really? Wow, that's incredible.
And he's only 14 years old.
Wow, that's amazing. It proves my point as well, doesn't it? It's just how beneficial that exercise can be. I'm really happy about that. Yeah, how is he now?
Oh, he's good as gold now. We ride around all year round, and his balance and coordination have really come forward. The good thing is he's even getting to the point now, which is a big thing for him. He can start, or he's just starting to learn how to take one hand off the handlebars to signal.
Really?
And he's starting to learn how to look back.
Wow, that's amazing.
With his balance issues and processing issues, these are incredible achievements.
They are, absolutely, absolutely. And I'm glad you shared that story, because some people, for some reason, they don't take exercise so seriously. They don't think it can be that beneficial. So I'm glad that you shared that story with me.
It's given him a lot more than just fitness. The overall way that it's affected his overall development, growth, self-belief and confidence. The bike ride was more than a bike ride.
Brilliant. That's the next thing I was going to mention, actually, is confidence. A lot of people who start exercising regularly tend to get more confident over time. So it does have a psychological effect as well. Makes you look younger. A lot of people don't understand that skin, rich in collagen, it relies on a very rich blood flow. So when you exercise regularly, your blood flow improves much better. So you got a lot more blood going around the body, and that makes your skin much tighter. So you tend to look much younger over time the more you exercise. Sarcopenia, is that something that you mentioned, Gaynor?
Yeah.
Yeah. So does anyone know what sarcopenia is? I mentioned this in a lot of my talks. So if anyone's been on my previous talks, you might know what sarcopenia is. Anybody?
No.
Nope. Okay. So over the age of 30, naturally, we tend to lose muscle over the age of 30. Like, when I say muscle, I'm talking about skeletal muscle. So, and only a little bit every year, but over the age of 40, it tends to be more exaggerated, then more exaggerated over the age of 50. So, as you get older, in other words, you tend to lose muscle. Now, as Brett correctly mentioned, losing muscle can have a domino effect, which is quite adverse for your medical conditioning. So you're more likely to suffer from diseases like diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity, things like osteoporosis, arthritis, things like that. And these are diseases that are often associated with people as they get older. So if we start exercising, weight training, doing resistance training, that reduces the chance of sarcopenia. In fact, in some cases, it can actually reverse sarcopenia. And on a side note, and this, Brett, you might be interested in hearing this, that they did a study around 15 years ago where they took a bunch of 70-plus-year-olds, around 7 of them were on Zimmer frames, and they got them to start doing some kind of resistance training exercise. Some of them were able to go to the gym, but most of them were doing exercises at home. And they were doing resistance training, which basically helped to grow their muscles back. And half of those people were able to get rid of their Zimmer frames. So around 4 of those people were able to get rid of Zimmer frames after around 4 months. So it just goes to show how powerful exercise can be. And improves brain function and memory. Now, how many people can relate to that? Yep, Brett, Daraj, can you relate to that? You feel better? Do you think better, more clearly when you exercise? I don't even know if he's there now. Anyone can relate to that?
It also, to include going to work, I feel. I've not been working for the last year or so, and I kind of feel a bit brain dead, but work also keeps me active brain-wise.
And when you say work, do you mean like moving around, physical activity, or are you talking about?
Job-wise, I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Now, there's something that you can Google this if you want. It's something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. I'm going to just write that in the chat for everybody. So when you got a moment, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Okay, I'm just sending that to everybody. That's something you can. Does everyone get that, by the way? What I just wrote.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's also a book that you can check out called Spark. Okay, very interesting book. Basically, what happened is this guy did an experiment where he got a bunch of kids to start exercising more, and then these were kids in the school, and then he got them to do these tests and exams, and their results were much better after doing exercise for a long time. And part of that reason was because we produce something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and that's something that helps you remember things better, helps your brain function better, and that's indirectly related to the blood flow thing I was mentioning earlier. So you get more blood flow around the body, goes to the brain, your brain works better, it remembers things better, and you focus on things better. You produce more dopamine, which again increases the amount of focus that you have. So it can be really good for kids as well who are maybe struggling to concentrate in school. Interesting book. Check it out when you got a moment. Spark, it's called. So these are sorry.
So that must be why the independent schools where my two children went do a lot of sport. It's
Absolutely,
not that us parents give them a load of money to build everything. They do it because they must know it must have a big factor. Every day they were doing sports, every single day. And I wouldn't necessarily say their teaching was fantastic because I'm a teacher myself. So I kind of tutored my own children myself. And they did very well. And it must be then. Now I understand why if you go around on an open day to see an independent school, the amount of sports facilities they have is huge.
Absolutely, yeah. That's part of the reason. They don't just do it for fun. It's just there is that aspect to it as well. So
appreciate you letting us know that. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So with all that in mind, it brings me to the movie The Matrix. Who's seen The Matrix, by the way? How many people have seen The Matrix?
I haven't.
You haven't? Okay, I'm talking about the original the good Matrix, not the rubbish one that came out last month. The original Matrix movie. And there's a really great line from that movie where Morpheus or Lawrence Fishburne says, there's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. Now that really resonated with me. Do you know why? Why do you think I mentioned that?
Oh, yes. Yeah, because there's a lot of us knows what to do, but we don't do it.
Absolutely, 100%. Do you know how many people in UK go to the gym or have a gym membership? Have a guess. Have a wild guess.
About
20% of the population?
Not that many. 14%. Oh, sorry, Brett. Did you want to say something, Brett?
Sorry, no. I just.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so around 14% since 2021 actually have a gym membership. I know that COVID has played a role in that, but still, that's not that many. And around half of those people actually use the membership on a regular basis. So not many people go to the gym. Not many people exercise at home either. Some people, well, I guess we can't really assess how many people, but generally speaking, not that many people exercise, but we are aware of the benefits of exercise. So I always ask people, why is it that we know how effective and how wonderful exercise is? Why is it that not many people do it on a regular basis? It's a very good question, isn't it?
It's quite often better to buy fitness equipment secondhand because 9 times out of 10 people have bought it, taken it home, and never used it.
Yeah. So you're right. So even if you buy fitness equipment, how often do you use that fitness equipment? You know, some people they use it for a short while and then they don't use it anymore. And that's really what I'm going to be talking about today. You know, how to motivate you to not only start using that equipment, but get used to. Oh, I should rephrase that. Not only to start exercising regularly, but to keep that as a regular thing in your life. Okay, that's what today's talk is going to be about. Does that sound good? Interested?
Yeah. Get too tired to go to the gym after work. That's the other problem.
Exactly, yeah. So it's that kind of lack of motivation. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to be really focusing on 10 tips that will help you keep motivated both inside and outside the gym. Okay. Now, the first thing that you should really think about is, why do you want to exercise? Now, everybody exercises for different reasons. Some people do it for health reasons, like the reasons I mentioned earlier. Most people tend to want to change their body physique. They want to lose fat, gain muscle, have a certain type of look to them, you know, so that they can look better, feel better in themselves. I always think that the most important thing to do is actually ask yourself that personal question. Why is it that you want to exercise? Why does Gaynor want to exercise? Why would Wendy want to exercise? Why would Duraj, Kay, why would you all want to exercise? And you're all going to come up with different answers. But if you focus on that why, okay, and remember, that's why you want to do it. That's the first thing that you've got to write down. And write it out on a piece of paper, what you actually want out of life. Because I always say that taking action without an end goal in place is a bit like driving a car with no set destination. So imagine that you had to go somewhere that you've never been before in your car, and you had no map, no satellite navigation. You'd find it a bit of a nightmare to get to that destination because you'll be kind of guessing what you're doing. You won't really have have that goal in place. Whereas if you have a satellite navigation, you get to that destination much quicker and without as much stress. Am I right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what is your goal? Now, what I do in a lot of my previous talks, I tend to focus on things like burning fat, building muscle, and how to do that effectively. I always say that the first thing you should do is have a reference point. So before you start your journey, weigh yourself, take some selfies, ideally with not that much clothes on, so you can see what you look like. You know, some people do selfies wearing all their clothes. They can't really appreciate the difference after 2 months. You want to if you want to go deep into it, then you can assess your calorie and macronutrient intake, but I won't go into that today. The point being that you want to have some kind of initial reference point that you can look back on. So 2-3 months down the line, you look back and think, wow, look how much weight I've lost. Look how much fat I've burnt. Look how much muscle I've built. You only appreciate that when you actually take pictures and have an initial reference point. And I'm going to do a little bit of shameless promotion, so just bear with me. One of the books that I've written actually covers this in a lot of detail. As I said, I've written 6 books. 2 of them, if you ever wanted to start today, I would suggest getting 2 of these books. They're quite easy reads. How to Get the Perfect Body and Your Pocketbook Guide to the Ultimate Gym Workout. You can read those books within an hour. They're both available on Amazon and my website, Lean Gains UK. Lots of pictures, very easy to read. As I said, it shouldn't take you more than an hour to read. And it will pretty much tell you everything you need to know to get started. That's one of my books. That's the other one. So the other one, Your Pocketbook Guide to the Ultimate Gym Workout, it covers workouts that you can do in the gym. If you decide to actually go to the gym and not work out at home, then you can do these exercises quite easily. And a lot of people, whenever I do these talks, a lot of people think, what about you, Jonathan? What's your journey been like? So I used to be quite obese. I was 29% body fat before I got into all this. And once I figured out the right thing to do and how to apply my weight training, and everything else, this was my 10-week conversion. So I lost around 13% body fat in 10 weeks. Not so bad. Not bad, is it? It's all right, isn't it?
No.
Yeah, so in my first week, I think I was around 29% body fat. I felt like crap. And I was really frustrated because all the things I did before weren't working. But when I figured out what to do,
much to achieve this?
both. But it was all about, for me, it was about knowing how to do it. So remember what I said earlier about driving a car with no set destination. Like I used to go to the gym and just throw weights around, but I didn't really have an idea. I didn't really know what I was doing. But when I figured it all out, it became quite easy because what I was doing was working.
How many times a week did you have to do this to get like that then?
I do around 4 times a week, 4 or 5 times a week.
Oh, good God.
How many hours?
Hours. I wouldn't do more than an hour.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but it was all about what you did as opposed to how long you were there.
And how many calories?
That was, oh gosh, at the time, my goodness, I think I was taking around, when I was obese, when I was 29% body fat, I was eating around 4,000 calories a day. But I was eating bad calories. There's good calories and bad calories. So, you know, you can have, that's something I cover in the books, by the way. But you can have, sorry, someone says,
And avocado is high calories, but it's good for you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got good fats in it, you know. So avocado. So it depends, you know. You can have, for example, a pack of crisps won't have the same amount of calories as an avocado, but they have different effects on the body. So yeah, you're right, you know. So that kind of brings me on to my second point, which is remain consistent. Now, consistency is a big problem, isn't it? You know, I used to see every single year when I was a personal trainer. Do you know the problem I used to get? Have a guess. Okay, well, the most popular time of the year was January and summer. And then in between that, no one was going to the gym. So people would always go to the gym January and summertime, always packed. And then other times during the gym, it wasn't as busy. You know, there were always going to be people who went regularly, but the vast majority of people would tend to go around January and summertime. And that was something that I was always quite concerned about, because consistency is so important. And it reminds me of that story of the hare and the tortoise. Now, who heard that story when you were younger? The hare and the tortoise. Does that sound familiar? Who knows that story? Everyone knows the story?
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I was a kid and I heard that story for the first time, I thought, so I'll tell the story real quick. There was a hare and a tortoise. They had a race, and the hare was quite arrogant, very fast, and said, "I can beat the tortoise. I can easily beat the tortoise in this race." So when the race started, the hare just ran really, really fast, and he almost got to the finishing line. But then he decided to chill out and have a rest, and he fell asleep. And by the time he woke up, the tortoise reached the finish line. Does that sound familiar? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought, I always used to think to myself, why didn't the hare just run to the end and then have a rest? I always used to think that to myself. But then I come to realize that we tend to do that as human beings, don't we?
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah. We just want to. We just want the quick result.
We want the quick fix, and that's what I used to see when I was a personal trainer. I used to see, people would feel bad after Christmas. They'd feel a bit bloated, and they'd go on some crazy diets. Let me just show you some of the diets that they used to go on. Where is it? One second. There we go. So these are some of the diets that were quite popular back in the 90s. That's when I started doing personal training. They would do. Have you ever heard of any of these diets? The juice diet, the detox 7-day detox diet, the cabbage soup diet. Anyone heard of that?
Yeah.
The carrot juice diet. These are the ridiculous diets. Now, when I was when I started off, I used to sell this thing called Benevita. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but I used to, and I'm quite embarrassed about it now. But I used to sell this shake called Benevita shake, and very popular. I made a lot of money selling it. But I didn't know what I know now. And it was basically just another fad diet. You get very, very quick results. You lose weight very quickly, but it's not sustainable. And this is something that I find a lot of people around the January time, they tend to want some kind of quick result. And from my experience, the quicker that you lose the weight, the quicker you gain it back. Do you remember, who's old enough to remember when Oprah Winfrey walked on stage and you remember the Oprah Winfrey show? Anyone remember that? Am I the only one? Yeah.
I do. Mm-hmm.
There was one episode she did where she went on some Optifast diet, which was a bit like the Benevita shake diet, and she lost around 140. No, wait, how much? She lost around 67 pounds. Yeah, within just a few weeks, and she dragged on stage this little cart. Can you see on the screen how much weight she lost? And you can see it's quite a big difference, can't you? So she lost all this. She was promoting this diet. What she said in an interview later on was, what I didn't know was that my metabolism was shot. 2 weeks after I lost all the weight, I returned to real food, at which point I was up 10 pounds. Since I wasn't exercising, there was nothing my body could do but regain the weight. And this is a very common problem with people who go on fad diets. This next person is a YouTuber. She went on a crash juice diet, and you can see the lady on the left, and you can see the lady on the right. Same person. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you see the image? Yeah. Now,
she looks anorexic on the one. She looks anorexic on the left.
Yeah. So the image on the left was after she did the diet, and she lost a lot of weight apparently. But then just 6 weeks later, she gained all the weight back again. And that's the person on the right is after she did the diet, because it wasn't sustainable. She lost the weight way too quickly. So the point I'm really trying to make is that, sorry, going a bit ahead of myself. The point I'm really trying to make is that it's better in the long term to be a tortoise than it is to be the hare who doesn't reach the finishing line. You with me? Okay. Sophie Brunt, did you want to say something, Sophie?
Yeah, in regards to, obviously, you're saying like the quick fixes and things like that. It's misleading because obviously they would work, or I've experienced them to work if you remain the calorie deficit after you come off of them. Because
I totally agree.
I just want to make sure that's right, because I've used one quite recently, lost 3 stone, and I'm 2 years through that, and I've still kept the 3 stone off. But it's about being in the calorie deficit, isn't it? So it's making sure that you're burning more than you're eating, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's why I didn't want to cover it too much in this talk, but in my previous talk, I did go into it quite a bit. And what I tend to find is that yes, it does tend to work for some people. I found that from my experience too. But
I just wanted to relate to the slides, the people that then gain the weight back on. Is that that could be down to, obviously, yes, they've gone back to eating, but have they gone back to eating clean foods, or have they gone back to eating a normal or an average diet? Is because it confuses me a little bit.
What I find is that the quicker you tend to lose the weight, as you said, when you say about calorie deficits, some people say it's better to drop your calories by around 15%, because if you drop it too far, let's say you drop your calories by 40-50%, yes, of course, you will lose the weight quickly, but then your body tends to adapt to that very quickly as well. So it puts the brakes on much quicker. Now, some people are okay with that, but from my experience, a lot of people find that hard to maintain. Whereas if you lose the weight slower, I find that from my clients, they tend to be able to adapt to that more. And the other thing you'll look at is how much muscle you have as well. So with very obese people who don't have a lot of muscle, they can get away with losing weight much quicker. Whereas if you have a lot of muscle already and you also have a lot of fat, when you lose the weight really quickly, you tend to burn a lot of that muscle. You know what I mean? So if you look on the slide on the screen, I wrote that on the screen, that losing the weight quickly can actually work for a lot of people who don't have that much muscle but have quite a lot of fat. Whereas if you already have a lot of muscle and you have a lot of fat, I would often recommend losing it slowly so you don't burn off as much muscle, but you do burn off the fat more. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I can say it again if you want, but it's like because how the body works. I said in the beginning, the body is very adaptive. So if you're cutting your calories quite a lot, you're not only going to lose fat, but you will lose muscle, and that can really be very difficult to maintain long term if you already have a lot of muscle. Like I had quite a lot of muscle, but I had a lot of fat over that. So if I was to go on a fad diet, I would lose a lot of strength. I would lose a lot of muscle, and that'd be very difficult for me to maintain. Is that okay? Any other questions? Or
yeah,
that makes sense.
Like
you sure?
I've got more fat than muscle.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
A lot of it's also to do with mental conditioning as well, because
absolutely.
You need to adjust your body and your brain at the same time. You know.
I like the analogy.
With my son, I lost a lot of weight. I was already reasonably fit, but I lost a degree of, well, I didn't lose weight. I gained weight because I built muscle, but I lost fat. But since I've got back to London again, I've sat down. I can't do the dancing I normally do.
And that's the thing.
In a chair and I'm not exercising.
The example I often use is driving a car. Like I live in Birmingham, but I go to London quite a lot. So I'm on the motorway quite often. And the example I tend to use is driving a car. You can drive a car on the motorway 110 miles an hour, okay, or 120 miles an hour. You'll get to London quicker, but you've got more chance of crashing your car or getting pulled over by the police. Whereas if you drive 70 miles an hour, it'll take you a bit longer to get there, but you're more likely to get there without any problems. And that's the example I give. So some people could drive 120 miles an hour and not get arrested, and not, you know what I'm saying? But you got more chance of that happening. So it's the same with weight loss. If you lose weight too quickly, you got more chance of crashing. If that makes sense. If you understand the analogy there, crashing. Okay, so don't know if you get that joke. Let's move on, shall we? So that takes me to my next point: procrastination. How many people are guilty of this? In all honesty, procrastination, putting off today what you can do tomorrow.
I'm the world's best.
Yes.
Sorry, Gaynor?
I was just going to say I'm the world's best procrastinator.
Yeah. You're not the only one. I'm guilty of this as well. I think a lot of people are quite guilty of this one because it's quite a natural thing to some degree. Now, what I used to do is I used to say, well, you know what? I'm not going to go to the gym today. I'm gonna go tomorrow because I'm gonna go to the shop and buy this and do but I would always put things off. I'll always put the gym off until tomorrow, or maybe it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I put it off till 9 o'clock in the evening. You know, that kind of thing. I think most of us are guilty of that, whether we like to admit it or not. And it's one of the biggest problems I saw when I was a PT. I found that a lot of people did procrastinate, and they used to cancel sessions with me and things like that. So a little psychological trick that I find works quite well is to tell yourself that you're going to just do a 15-minute session. Have you ever heard this before? Does it sound familiar? So like, okay, let's say, yeah, let's say, tell yourself that you're going to do just 15 minutes of exercise, and then after that 15 minutes, you're going to go back to watch your favorite TV program, whatever. But if you say, I'm just going to do 15 minutes, what happens is that when you start exercising, 9 out of 10 times, you won't do the 15 minutes, you'll do an hour. And that happens like 90% of the time. That an hour later, you're really into it, and you're thinking, wow, I only went for 15 minutes, you know? But if you tell yourself before you go to the gym that you're only going to do 15 minutes, then that's enough of a psychological push to actually get you to the gym. The hardest part is actually getting to the gym. Would you agree with that? Like if I told you at 9 o'clock tonight, go to the gym or start exercising, it's kind of hard if you've been like quite relaxed and chilled out for a few weeks to actually get into doing that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or another example would be if you're going, I mean, how many people are going to work tomorrow? Like most people are starting work tomorrow, aren't they?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I run a charity, so I'm doing it all the time.
Okay, but a lot of people are starting like tomorrow, and because we've been off for a while, it's gonna, you know, it's hard to kind of get back into it. But we have to go to work, and but once you start working for a few weeks, it becomes a bit more habitual, doesn't it? You know what I mean? So the hardest part is really getting to the gym. There's a very famous saying that the only bad gym session is the one that you don't do. Yeah. So that's also the procrastination. So we don't want to procrastinate. Now, something that we mentioned.
It's strange how 15 minutes turns into 1 hour, but not 30 minutes or 45 minutes. That's a hell of a lot longer than 15 minutes. It kind of really fascinates.
Yeah. I mean, when I say 15, I mean, I'm just saying that as an example. Some people, maybe 30 minutes, some people will be 40. But the point being that once you're in that environment, you tend to, most people tend to do a little bit longer than they anticipate. Most people, if they say they're going to do 15 minutes, they end up doing much longer than that, simply because they get into it, you know what I mean? But actually getting out of the house and going to the gym, that's a lot of the time is the part where we procrastinate. Once we're actually in the gym, it's not so bad. For some reason, I don't even understand why, but that tends to be the case a lot of the time. Fourth point, meal planning. You've heard this saying, haven't you? You are what you eat. Yep. So how many people have gone through this? You know, I always say that it's a really good idea to plan your meals the day before. So if you can cook, or if you've got time to prepare your meals the day before, ideally, plan what you're going to eat the next day, and then you'll eat that food the next day. Whereas if you don't, you're more likely to cheat. You're more likely to go to the takeaway or go to the local cafe and cheat and eat the foods that you shouldn't be eating. Whereas if you plan what you're eating the day before, then you can bring that into work, and you're less likely to be distracted. It's worked for me really well. It works for some of my clients back in the day. There's something that I would suggest ideally doing if you can. As I didn't really want to be talking too much about calories today, because that could be another 2-hour conversation. But the idea being that if you know, once you know what you're doing and once you're eating, then you can plan that the day before, and then you can bring that food into work the next day. What some people do is that they, a lot of athletes do this actually, is that they plan how many calories, how many macronutrients they're going to eat the day before. They put it in Tupperware dishes, and then they eat that. That's what they're going to eat the next day. They don't eat anything else, and that way they can strictly plan how many calories they're eating that day. I actually wrote a recipe book, which really helps, because it's got my recipe book I wrote, Lean Meals for Everybody. If you're interested, check out my website, Lean Gains UK, and it's got all the calories, fat, protein, carbs content, So you don't have to use MyFitnessPal or anything like that. Let's say that you know that you need 2,000 calories a day to lose weight. You can add up the cumulative amount of calories in the recipes, and you can do it that way if you like. Is that making sense? Have I explained it right?
Yes, the macronutrients.
Any questions?
I've forgotten about the macronutrients, what they are again.
Who said that, sorry?
It's Kay, sorry.
Okay, yeah. So macronutrients, basically 97% of the food we eat are macronutrients. Macronutrients is what the food is made up of. So you got fat, protein, carbohydrates, fiber, and water, which doesn't really have any calories. And then in some cases you got alcohol, but we're not going to talk about alcohol today. So it's mainly fat, protein, carbohydrates, and fiber. That makes up most of the food. Most of the calories come from those macronutrients. So is that making sense? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And what I talk about in my How to Get the Perfect Body book, I talk about how many macronutrients you should be having, in conjunction with how many calories you should be having, depending on your weight and things like that. So yeah, just something I thought I'd touch on. Any questions so far? Is it all making sense? Any questions?
Yeah.
All making sense? Okay. Now, by the way, how many people do go to the gym?
Yeah.
Sophie,
I do, yeah.
Okay. How often do you go? Just out of interest.
5 days a week.
Oh wow. Okay. What do you do? Do you do like weights or cardio?
Mixture really. I'm lucky enough to have a treadmill at home, so if I can't make the gym, I just go out there. And then I do weights on a Friday.
Excellent. That's really good.
Again, I never used to do weights because I used to be too nervous to go and do something I couldn't do, because let's face it, getting on a bike or a treadmill is quite self-explanatory, but going and picking up something that is almost like a foreign object. But
do you feel that's because do you feel that this sounds a bit sexist, but do you feel like as a woman you feel more uncomfortable lifting weights? Yeah, it's a very common problem I used to have when I was a personal trainer. A lot of women were very uncomfortable doing weight training.
So I'll be honest, I won't do it in the gym, but I'll do it with my PT in his garage, because I won't do it because, again, I go back to what if I'm doing it wrong, or what if I pick the wrong item up or something like that.
Totally. And I totally understand that. Sorry, Nelly, I don't go to the gym but use weights at home. Excellent. 3 to 4 times when so really it's not so much about where you don't have to necessarily go to the gym. I say that because a lot of people don't have weights at home, but if you've got weights at home, that's perfectly fine, nothing wrong with that. The problem that some people have is overtraining. Has anyone gone through that, where you overtrain?
Well, that was going to be one of my questions, actually. So I'm probably guilty of that. And I need to investigate a bit more. So, for example, yesterday I probably over-exercised, and last night I had not half as much sleep as I usually would. Is it because you generate a hormone which is the same as the stress hormone, isn't it?
Cortisol, yeah.
I don't know much about it. I've just read and.
Yeah, I actually cover that in my book. I wrote a book called Lean Gains. It's quite. I do cover that quite a lot in that book, because it's a very, very common problem. And the irony is that on one hand, that's why I put, if you look on the screen, it says get the balance right, because on one hand I'm saying go to the gym more, avoid procrastination, all that, but you don't want to overdo it. So you got to get that balance right. Now what happens is, you want to take out time to rest, because your body adapts to, remember I said in the beginning, your body is adaptive. So going to the gym provides a stimulus, but resting and sleeping is when the magic happens. That's when your muscles grow. That's when the muscle adapts to the progressive overload. You know what I mean when I say progressive overload, don't you? Okay, so Sophie, when you lift weights, is your goal to increase the number of reps that you do, increase the weight that you do over time? Or
the cable weights in the gym, I just do my own thing, but my weights with my personal trainer would be to get heavier, to lift heavier weights.
That's what progressive overload. Yeah. So over time you can lift more, basically. and that's the body adapting. Now, when you overtrain, so if you're training, or let's say you train 7 days a week for 2 hours, let's say for argument's sake, you're not allowing your muscles time to recover. So you're building up a lot of cortisol. You're not allowing your muscles to really recover. You're more likely to burn yourself out. And over time, you're going to feel a bit weak and lackluster in the gym. It's a very common problem. And so, although it's very important to keep going regularly, you don't want to overdo it. When the moment you overdo it, you are going to find it really hard to continue because the body just naturally burns out. So, and that sometimes can cause people to not want to go to the gym. So I usually suggest going maybe 4 or 5 times a week, doing no more than an hour ideally. But also there's something called deload weeks. Has anyone heard of deloading? Does that sound familiar to anybody? Deloading?
No.
Okay. Basically, deloading is every 6-7 weeks or so, you want to take a week off and just let the whole body recover and then go back into it. So you do 6-7 weeks of training. Then your 8th week, you can either take it off or do very, very simple light weights, very, very simple exercises, and then you can go back to your routine after that. So that way you can avoid overtraining. Making sense?
So if you did quite high cardio, or for example, which did a lot of running, would you say on your 8th week then just go out and do like a 2-mile walk as opposed to your run, or would you say your 8 weeks do nothing?
Well, it depends as well. Again, if you're doing a lot of weight training, you don't want to do too much cardio at the same time. So I always suggest, if you're doing, let's say you're doing 5 days of weight training, especially if you're doing heavy weight training, you don't want to do more than 2 or 3 days of cardio on top of that, because it can kind of contribute towards overtraining, can minimize your gains. And if you are doing cardio, you want to do it separate to weight training sessions. Does that sound familiar? So what a lot of professional athletes do is they might do the weight training in the morning, and then they might do 2-3 cardio sessions in the evening a week. And that tends to be like HIIT cardio, like intense cardio. Now, you can do more if you're doing low intensity cardio, because you're not burning out the muscle as much. Even though you're not putting the body through as much stress. But if you're doing a lot of HIIT and you're doing a lot of heavyweight training on a regular basis, you're more likely to burn out. Candice Film, I'm just reading a message. I think I've been doing that, but didn't know there was a name for it. Yeah. It's a very common problem. And again, the irony is that some people can get away with doing that. So it is a personal thing. But generally speaking, I would say that you don't want to do too many gym sessions, because you're more likely to get overtrained. Is that making sense?
Yeah, I think I've been doing that actually. I didn't realize, because I was feeling really tired after a while, just feeling burnt out, and I just felt like I needed a break from the gym for a little. So
but it's a bit like it's a bit like working, isn't it? I mean, if you go to work, let's say you work 7 days a week and you don't sleep properly, eventually you're going to get burnt out, aren't you? So you need your weekends off, you need your holidays. So same thing, really.
Right.
We're applying it to the physical body, physical exercise. How many people wear headphones or listen to music when you're training? I do. I love music.
Yeah.
I find going to the gym without music very boring, So I'm always wearing wireless headphones, and it's something that I would suggest. And there's quite a few reasons why, more than you may think, actually.
Most of your workouts that you're thinking about are focused around weights, not so much cardio, yeah?
Well, both. Why not cardio?
I'm just listening to what you're saying, and I felt that most of what you were thinking was mostly weights orientated.
Oh, sorry. What's this in regards to? Sorry, Brett, I didn't understand.
Just your general efforts on working out as all gym and weights rather than cardio.
Sorry. Yeah.
I don't do weights.
Okay, I'm with you. Cardio. It depends on it depends on what your goal is, really. If your goal is to just remain fit and you're not necessarily looking at growing muscle or things like that, then cardio is fine. I would suggest weight training anyway, but you don't have to lift heavy weights. And the reason is because weight training is one of the best ways of reducing sarcopenia. Like in that experiment that was done in the older people who were on Zimmer frames. They were used to like walking and things like that, but in this particular experiment, they got them to actually lift weights and do resistance training, and that was what got them the results that we really wanted. So I would suggest some kind of resistance training, but that's not to say that cardio isn't beneficial, because cardio is obviously beneficial as well. Is that making sense?
Yeah, I guess I build weights into my cardio without realizing it. Like when I do my bike rides, I'm not unfamiliar with loading another 20 kg of weight on the back of the bike that my legs have to carry around.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
I do a lot
so
of
you're
dancing.
embracing
I do
resistance
a
training.
dive style of dancing where I quite often lift ladies. So I guess that's my weightlifting, is just lifting ladies up instead.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the problem, isn't it? Is that you want to keep challenging your body, and sometimes I think you need a little bit more than just cardio. So let me just send this message. Any questions, by the way? Shoot, any questions at all?
I mean, I'm 57, so although I do want to gain muscle.
Oh, you look younger than that.
Thank you.
Wow. Yeah.
Although I do want to gain muscle, I don't feel I need to be another Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's not going to be my direction. I'd just like to tighten this up, really.
You will have to do some weight training then. You don't have to do no crazy weight training, but essentially resistance training is going to be that missing ingredient. Definitely. Cardio will only do so much. You'll have to do some resistance training. Did Miss Core, is it Core? Did you have a question, Core?
Yeah, it's Kay. I wanted to know about but I've forgotten the question now.
It's okay.
God, I had a meniscal tear, so I had surgery for that. It's been 3 months,
okay.
right? It's been 3 months. I just do a bit of physiotherapy at home. They're rubbish when I go there. And they've told me to go to the gym now. And I'm a bit worried about whether the gym will actually take me on if I've had, well, it's 3 months now. It's not 3 weeks or anything. Whether they're okay with people that might have had some sort of surgery, and what kind of.
I've had surgery. I've had surgery. I've had a tear on my AC tendon. I've had back problem. My advice is always to, first of all, listen to your body, and always get a second opinion. If you're not happy with your physio, I would see another one, because when I was a bit younger, I used to ignore these problems. I just think if I just keep lifting weights, I'll be okay. I ended up with osteoarthritis on my right shoulder because I didn't.
That as well.
Yeah. So what you need, I would suggest maybe an MRI or something like that. I wouldn't, if you're not happy with your physio, then I'd see someone else. I saw 4 physios before I found someone I was happy with. I saw a massage therapist. But what you have to do is you have to, any problems like that, don't take them lightly, because I'm telling you from my own experience, I regret it. You know, I
go to the gym. They told me to do gym exercises, but 3 months on, I'm not really walking properly. I can't really walk.
Exactly. So I would. You have to get a second. You have to find someone who you feel comfortable with, who knows what they're doing. Otherwise, you're kind of just playing with fire, really. Now from my own experience, I'm telling you not to just ignore these kind of problems. But this osteoarthritis is irreversible now. It's not so bad, but if I paid attention to it earlier, I probably wouldn't have had it. You know what I mean? So these things.
It just kind of happened to me suddenly. It's kind of overnight thing. Honestly, it really was.
Yeah, that's even more reason to look into it. Someone say something.
From personal experience, going back to the gym is a good thing. When I was in my young 20s, I had a major motorcycle accident which knocked me unconscious. I was out for 3 weeks, I think.
Yeah.
And when I finally came round, the body had taken quite a knocking. I was only at a hospital for a few weeks before I started making my way back to the gym, trying to do workouts. I had to do very limited workouts, much smaller than what I was used to.
I'm just wondering whether the gyms would actually accept somebody that's had surgery, recently-ish.
Well, now I'm going to come back onto that, and I had to rebuild my body then. And then 8 months before COVID arrived, so that's what, 2.5 years, nearly 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I had my tibia and fibia. Those are both the bones that go down to you from your knee to your ankle.
Yeah.
They had to cut through both of those on my left foot, realign the foot.
Wow.
And then join everything together with metal plates.
Wow.
It took 8 months for that bone to regrow and for me to be able to get to the point that I could walk again. But it only took me a year from that stage to riding from Land's End to John O'Groats. Because I worked on redeveloping that muscle in the appropriate way. But as much as I could work out, massage centres wouldn't massage me.
Okay.
They would now, but they wouldn't massage me for the first year after surgery because they didn't want to do any damage to the tissue.
Yeah, I can imagine. So,
yeah, exactly. So, you know, I personally believe that 9 out of 10 times going to the gym is going to fix a lot of these problems, but there are times when it won't, quite simply. And when I was training very intensely, when I was actually training really intensely back when I was 25, 26, and that's when I got a lot of problems because I was overdoing it. I was lifting very heavy weights, and that's where I started to develop osteoarthritis. But at the time, I ignored the pain, and I wish I didn't now because I could have reversed a lot of these problems I got now. So I think it's a double-sided sword to some degree.
They've told me to strengthen the quadriceps. And just the physio alone isn't doing it. Now they're saying
is it osteoarthritis you have? Is it?
It is.
Osteoarthritis?
Yeah.
It is, yeah, that's right. You need an MRI, to be honest.
No, I had that before I had the surgery. I had the MRI, and that's when they did the arthroscopy. I've had the arthroscopy, haven't I?
Okay, so yeah, you can probably get away with doing relatively light. You don't do heavy weights because that will make it worse. But then you don't want to do it too light because you want some kind of they're medium kind of resistance training, squats, things like that. Also, you want to develop your leg. Go on.
If you do that light workout, the other thing you'll get is if you work on all of the other muscles within your body, they will be able to support the weaker section with more grounding, more basis.
I'm with you. Okay. Yeah. The glutes and things as well, I suppose. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Okay. So let's go back to the music. Music is great because it keeps you focused. You know what else is great about music? If you have a playlist, you know what's really good about having a playlist?
Conditions your mind that you will react appropriately to the sounds without thinking about it.
Never thought about it like that, but yeah, I guess it does. But
I get it through dance. That I learn a certain amount of dance. If I learn it to the right music, then I will dance perfectly to that song without even thinking about it, because my body has learned how to react to the sounds.
That's interesting. I never thought about it like that. But yeah, that's another benefit, I guess, as well. Yeah. But I was more thinking, like, if you wanted to, like, if any of you decide to get hold of my pocketbook guide to the Ultimate Gym Workout, what I've done, I've got, like, workouts that are designed to, ideally, you don't want to do more than an hour in these workouts. And what I find is that if I've got a playlist that goes on for 1 hour, then I know that once the hour is over, I'm thinking, okay, that's probably enough for me. That's a personal thing. Doesn't work for everybody. Definitely works for me. Also, obviously, you want to listen to music that's energetic. So you don't want to listen. I personally don't like to work out, lift heavy weights to ballads and things like that because I don't feel as motivated. Whereas if it's like something like the Prodigy or something, very energetic music, I tend to get more into it. I tend to feel more motivated. Gives me more energy. So that's a tip that I would give to anyone who's new to working out with music. So I've just got another question. Could you post a link to your workout program, please? Yep, I will. I'll definitely do that. What I'm going to do at the end, I'm going to put the links at the end if that's okay. Is that Christina?
Could you recommend some music as well? Which ones?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. It's funny you mentioned that because I was going to put it on my website next week.
All right.
There's a lot of swearing in the music that I listen to, so just gonna bear in mind. I listen to things like Rage Against the Machine and stuff like that. So it's not for everybody, But
I think music is a completely personal thing.
It's very personal, but I tend to find as long as it's not like boring ballads and stuff like that. Like, that's something you can listen to when you're drinking chamomile tea before you go to bed. That's great. But when you're in the gym, you want to, and keep you motivated, really energetic. I tend to find that's really good.
I mean,
how
Mr.
many people
Motivator has nice music.
Sorry?
Mr. Motivator that used to come on TV, he had nice music.
Yeah, I remember him, yeah. Oh gosh, that's going back a few years, isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
You want something that automatically, just when the sound comes on, it makes you want to move, even if you're not really feeling
absolutely
inspired. You just, that sound, you kind of think, yeah, I could dance to this, I could move to this, it gives you that little buzz inside.
Absolutely, yeah. It is going to be, you're right, Brett, it's very personal, isn't it? Like, what I'm into may not be what Brett's into or what Candice is into, so it is going to be personal. But I would suggest, as long as it's energetic, especially if you're getting into weight training and things like that, you want something that is quite energetic. So let's move on. Sleep. We mentioned sleep a bit earlier, didn't we? Whatever we do when we're awake, we do much worse when we're sleep deprived. Would you agree with that, Sophie?
Sorry, say that again, please.
If you don't get enough sleep, whatever you do when we're awake, we do much worse when we're sleep deprived. Do you think that's true?
Oh, 100%. The effort in what you're putting in is half. It sometimes, if I've not slept, but there's no point going, because you're just putting in, I don't know, 20%, and really you need to be putting in a lot more. So I find the sleep, not just with exercise, with everything. If you're not sleeping, you're productive at work. If you're not sleeping properly, you're not productive with your meal planning. Like, the sleep, I think, is the key.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. It's better. I mean, there's been so many studies. There's been way over 1,000 studies to prove that point. This is just one famous study where they talk about how essentially your testosterone levels drop. In a few months, I'm going to be doing a talk about hormones, by the way, if anyone's interested. But there are these hormones essentially which contribute towards muscle growth and fat loss, and there are other hormones that contribute towards fat growth. You tend to produce more fat growing hormones when you sleep deprived. Things like cortisol, as we mentioned a bit earlier. You produce less growth hormone, less testosterone, less leptin, and more ghrelin. What does that mean in English? What that means is that you're going to gain more fat, you'll burn more muscle, your energy levels will drop, you'll have more hunger pangs, you'll crave more sugar-rich, fat, calorific foods, you lose concentration, you lose focus, and obviously you lose motivation and energy when you're sleep deprived. There was actually a study that showed that people who sleep less than 5 to 6 hours a day would tend to have these problems much more than people who sleep 7-8 hours a day. So it's very important to get around 7-8 hours a day every day, or night, should I say, nighttime, and you'll feel the difference. All making sense?
As you get older, you need less sleep.
Sorry?
As you get older, you need less sleep.
Really? Okay. Never heard that one before.
It is a reality that older people tend to sleep less because they're just, I don't know, they tend to. But, okay, this is just everyone to their own. I wholly agree with what you're saying.
Okay.
I just can't forget about the fact that I have spent so many years. There was one period where I was working 20 hours a day. I was running construction sites as a site manager, and I was doing 2 10-hour shifts, getting 2 hours sleep in between them.
Okay. And have you seen a difference if you get a bit more sleep? Is there any difference at all, or is it the same?
Oh, I was doing 80 hours a week, and I was perfectly fine. Nobody could tell I was sleep deprived in any way at all, but I think I was just adrenaline driven.
I think it's what your body gets used to, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I didn't sleep very well last night, but I managed to ride horse this morning and run, and no one in my group would have known I had no sleep unless I said I didn't sleep.
You can get away with it for a couple of nights, so can't you? Like, I've done that myself. I've stayed awake all night and gone to the gym next day, everything's fine, but I can't do that for 3 or 4 days in a row. It'll just catch up eventually. And that's the other thing. There was another study they did where they showed that you can. It's not so much how much sleep you get at one time. It's more a cumulative amount of sleep. So if you sleep, let's say, I don't know, 40 hours at the end of a week, that's going to have the same effect as if you had one night and you didn't sleep, but you made up for it the next night. Kind of balances out, you know what I mean? So a bit like with calories, really, you know, like when some of my clients used to have cheat days where they would eat a lot more calories on one particular day, but then they'll make up for it another day, where they'll eat fewer calories, and they kind of balanced out at the end of the week. So I think sleep is very much like that. But yeah, obviously you shouldn't underestimate the importance of sleep. Very important. Let's move on, shall we? Surrounding yourself with like-minded people. This is very important, isn't it? Do you think that we can sometimes fall victim to peer pressure? Do you think that's true?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, who's heard of a guy called Jim Rohn? He was one of those motivational speakers. He's passed away now, and he famously said, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend most of your time with." Yeah. So let's imagine that you spend all your time with these people, these lovely people here, who eat pizza all day and watch TV. It's harder to feel motivated, isn't it, if you were to spend all your time with people like that, as opposed to people who, for example, in the next slide, who are constantly training. Let's say that you live with 5 personal trainers. Okay, you're more likely to go to the gym and train more, aren't you, than if you were to live with 5 people who just sit down and eat pizza all day. You know what I mean? Do you think that's true? Am I right? Can you relate to that?
Yeah.
I mean, not everybody, obviously, but I think if you imagine that a lot of people around you were gym goers, you're more likely to go to the gym more frequently. You know, and if most of the people around were not gym goers, eating lots of pizza, things like that, more likely to not go to the gym. And a lot of the time, it's a very subconscious thing, isn't it? Also, what I've found is that you can benefit with an accountability partner, because we all feel a bit down sometimes. I put this image on the screen. I don't know if you can see it very well, but it's like everyone's putting their hands up, because we all need a lift sometimes. You know, we all sometimes need that kind of boost. And if you've got an accountability partner that can, you know, I used to have an accountability partner, like someone who would phone me up at 8 o'clock in the evening and say, "Look, I'm in the gym. Where are you?" You know, that kind of thing. And I'm like, "Okay, I better go to the gym." You know what I mean? So that can be really helpful. Let's see, Tina. I don't have any friends that go to. So so in answer to what Tina questioned, you know, if you want to look for somebody, it's not very difficult. You can go on Facebook, social media. You can even join one of my meetup groups. I've got over 1,000 subscribers. So you know, just reach out to one of those people, or even me if you're in the area. I'm in Wolverhampton, so if you're looking for someone to work out with, it shouldn't be too difficult. Just don't be too shy about it. Just reach out. There's loads of Facebook groups. You know, so it depends on where you live. It shouldn't be too difficult to find someone to train with. But ideally, if you can, then it'll make you a lot more motivated. You know. And again, I am aware that not everybody goes to the gym. Some people train at home. But any questions so far? Is it all making sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions? No? Shall I move on?
It's cool. Carry on.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So track your progress. Now, this is something that I mentioned a little bit earlier. Tracking your calories, weight, lift, etc., etc. Now, the reason I mention this is because, you know, one of the biggest problems that I noticed with regular clients was they would often hit plateaus, and then they would feel like they're not making any progress, whereas actually they were, but they didn't realize it. And it's for the same reason that you don't realize that you're getting older until you look back at pictures from 15 years ago. Have you noticed that? Like, this is one of my clients, for example. You can see the difference, can't you, in the beginning and the end? Can you see that? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Quite a good difference. Yeah. Now, the first 3 pictures were quite quick. You noticed that within just a couple of months, and then it took him around. See the bottom pictures? Yeah, it took him around 8-9 months to get there, because it was slower. So he didn't really see the changes until he looked back on the pictures. And it's only when you look back at the pictures you think, wow, okay. Wow. Because it's harder to see the changes towards the end. It's easy to see the change at the beginning, but towards the end, it's harder. So if you don't track pictures, if you don't take weekly pictures of yourself, you don't weigh yourself, you don't monitor your calories and your macronutrients and track your progress, then it's harder to appreciate how much you changed. Does it make sense? Just for the same thing, if you look at pictures of yourself 15 years ago, you think, wow, look how much I've aged, but you don't notice that on a daily basis. And that's why you have to keep tracking your progress. Very important. Track your progress. Take pictures. Don't give up. And when you do see the changes, these are some other people as well. When you do see the changes, that's when you appreciate just how far you've gone. Okay. So that's very important. Now we're coming towards the end now. And it's pretty much similar to what I just mentioned. Never deviate from your journey. Never deviate from your journey. I don't know if it's okay. Can anyone relate to this point? You know, when I was going to the gym, there was always people telling me that what I was doing was rubbish or I should do something different. And for a while I would listen to them, because you get into the habit of doing things, don't you? You know what is a habit? What's the difference between a chore and a habit? Does anyone know what a habit is?
It takes 14 days to create a habit.
66 days, according to a study. In fact, let me go back. I think I might have skipped that actually. Let me go back to this thing here. Where was it? Yeah, here it is. There was a European Journal of Social Psychology back in 2009. They said that a habit is a repeated behavior that becomes subconscious. So, how many people think about putting their clothes on before they leave the house? You don't think about it, do you? You just automatically do it, right? So if you were to do that repeated behavior for 66 days, they say it'll become a habit. In other words, it'll become very uncomfortable not to do that behavior. So if you were to train, let's say, go to the gym for 66 days in a row, on your 67th day, okay, or well, not so literal, but after, let's say, 2 months, it will be very, very uncomfortable for you not to do that. You'll feel a bit uncomfortable not going to the gym if you've been going for 2 months. So generally speaking, if you get into the routine of doing something, that becomes a habit. Now, sometimes you may find a gym buddy or somebody in the gym might say, well, you shouldn't be doing that, or you should try doing this. And they can kind of deviate you away from your routine, which is why I say that if you're going to follow the regimen that I suggest, it's 100% science backed, so it does work. But if you get distracted from that, it might take you away from your goals, and you may not appreciate you might. It's almost like having a satellite navigation system, and then someone stopping and saying you're going the wrong way. The satellite navigation system says, nope, this is the way you should go. Someone tells you, no, you got to go that way, and then you end up going somewhere else. So it's really important not to deviate away from your journey. Keep focused and remain consistent, and you will get the results that you've been looking for, whatever they are. If you want to burn fat, build muscle, there's a science behind it, and that's something that I specialize in. Okay, so is that all making sense? In other words,
yes,
Rome wasn't built in a day. You're not always going to get the results within 3 weeks. There's a lot of YouTube videos saying that you can, and a lot of them are garbage. So it does sometimes take 6 months, 8 months, sometimes a year to get to where you want to go. And you will go through slow phases where you won't see changes as readily as you did in the beginning. But in the end, you will reach the finishing line, like the tortoise. Okay, so it's all about remaining consistent. Any questions so far?
No, but I just think it might be helpful for others. Like you mentioned that you get to a plateau, or you feel like your fitness isn't going up, or you're not. But if you do your measurements, because sometimes obviously that, or you, I don't know, I've got a pair of jeans that I want to get on by, say, the end of the year. And I've got that as a goal, because as you do plateau and your body does get used to it. But having those things, those other steps in place, like sort of help you get a bit further.
Yeah, I mean, Well, I mean, in March, I'm going to be doing a talk about how to overcome weight loss plateaus, where you can actually embrace like refeed days and things like that, diet breaks. Are you aware of that, Sophie? Like diet breaks.
Sorry?
And have you heard of diet breaks and refeed days and things like that? Diet breaks.
Not really, but I follow a set thing anyway, so it would probably be good for me to take part in that.
Yeah, I mean, in March, I'm doing a talk in March where I'm going to be focusing on refeeds and things like that. Because you are right. I think there are times when you're going to lose the weight. If your goal is to burn fat, there are times when your body is kind of going to adapt to a slower metabolism. So there are things that you can do to kickstart the metabolism. We call them refeeds and diet breaks. But again, what I do in my books, I do encompass that into a long-term program. So my point is that if you include that and you remain consistent in pretty much everything else, you will see the results over a long time. But these are going to be problems that you will inevitably face in the long term. And that's what kind of winds me up about a lot of these fad diets, is that they promise you short-term results, but they don't cover the problems with long-term. If you're sticking long-term into something. 1 second, this is a question. Yeah. So that's pretty much it. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to summarize everything. We'll put all the pieces together. Okay. You want to keep goals. Goals are very important. You want to have an end goal, and you reach the end goal by a series of smaller goals. Okay. A bit like with a satellite navigation system. You know what I mean? Let's say that you want to go somewhere in Scotland. Okay. Your end goal is to hit the Scotland from Birmingham, but it's easy to go up to Scotland, but to go to that specific road, you will actually have to be more specific about your goals. So you have a long-term goal and lots of short-term goals leading up to the end-term goals. That's going to require a lot of consistency. Okay. And that in itself, consistency is going to require repeated behavior, which takes roughly 2 months to become a habit. Once that repeated behavior becomes a habit, you're more likely to be compliant. And that's really what it's all about, because then you're less likely to procrastinate. Procrastination means that you don't want to start tomorrow, you want to start today. Tell yourself that you're going to go to the gym 15 minutes, you're more likely to psychologically start, as opposed to tell yourself you're going to do a 2-hour session. Okay. Plan your meals in advance, less likely to cheat, less likely to eat junk food, because you've got your meals already planned in place. So when you're hungry, you don't have to think about what to eat, it's all there. You don't want to overtrain, but at the same time, you want to get around 7-8 hours of sleep. Track your progress and hang out with like-minded people. And above all, keep focused on your goal. Don't deviate from your goal. Don't get distracted. And I can promise you, if you do all that, you'll get success in 2022. Okay? And it's never too late to start. I don't care what anybody says. It's never too late to start. Who's heard of this guy? Jiddu Krishnamurti. Jiddu Krishnamurti. I always get his name wrong. Jiddu Krishnamurti. Who's heard of him? An Indian philosopher.
All right.
I want to finish off with a quote by Jiddu Krishnamurti. And it goes like this. In oneself lies the whole world, and if you know how to look and learn, the door is there and the key is in your hand. Nobody on earth can give you either the key or the door to open except yourself. And what that basically means in layman's terms is that you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Okay. The horse has the ability to drink the water, but you can't make it drink, but it can drink the water if it wants to. Okay. All you can do at best is take that horse to the water. There you go. There's the water. Do you want to drink it or not? Okay. And that's really what it's about. You have the power to do whatever you want. Okay. There's nothing stopping you. I don't care what anybody says. You have the power to do whatever you want. If you want to lose fat, build muscle, whatever you want to do, you can do it, because that's the gift that we have. Okay. So on that note, I'd like to wish you all a wonderful 2022. Start with a bang. And I'd love this to be the best year of your life. Thank you for listening. And if you want to keep in touch with me, you can email me, john@leangains.co.uk, or you can check out my site, leangains.co.uk, where I cover a whole lot of cool stuff. I've got all my books on sale if you want to buy any of my books. I've also got some talks where I cover other topics. I've got blog pages and things like that. Any questions? Anything anybody wants to say? Oh, Wendy, you put your hand up. Is there a question you have, Wendy? And a Kay, sorry, I think Kay has got a question as well. Kay, you still there?
It's about the can you hear me? Yeah, it's about the it's the body fat percentage. I know you can get scales where it tells you that as well. Is there any other way, but I don't have those kind of scales? Is there any other way how I can check my body fat percentage, or can it only be done in the gym?
Oh, there's loads of ways.
Boots have them, I think. Boots pharmacies
have what? What do you mean?
Those scales that you're talking about. Boots have them. No, some Boots.
I don't want to buy any more.
No, not to sell. You just go in there and you pay like £1 and it prints it out for you.
Oh, that big machine that you stand on, does it? I wondered what it did on there. Yeah, okay. Right.
Yeah, I'm gonna include a link. Yeah, with how you can. If you just bear with me, I'm gonna put a link in the group. Okay.
And and how do we know what percentage we should be as well? That's what I'd like to know as well. I suppose it depends on what.
I'm gonna recommend. I know it sounds a bit salesy, but I'm gonna recommend getting hold of my Lean Gains my Lean Gains book, because I cover that in a lot of detail. But I'm gonna send you a link. There you go. I've just sent it to everybody. Okay.
Okay.
And that's a link that you can use. There's around seven ways you can find your body fat percentage. Some are more accurate than others. The ones in the gym aren't that accurate, to be honest with you.
Really?
But to me, how I look at it is, it's not so much about how accurate you want it to be. It's more about how regularly you take it. So the most accurate ones are the most expensive and impractical ones. But if you can get a rough idea what your body fat percentage is, you'll find that over time it will drop anyway, even if it's inaccurate. So it's more about just looking at that. But even if it's an inaccurate one, it will still drop over time if you're losing the weight or burning the fat.
They say if you can pinch more than an inch, is that saying true?
Yeah, that's ideal. I guess it depends on how far you want to go, really. You know, like I always like this. I always say there's a 0 to 100%. So 0 is someone who does no exercise and is stays at home, eats pizza. 100% is an athlete. You know, and so if you want to go to if you want to do something like an athlete, how would they do? Then if you just want to lose a few pounds, then you could probably get away with not being so strict about it, really. What I do is I tend to use the body fat calculators online, which aren't accurate at all. But when I was losing the weight, even with the inaccurate ones, they were still dropping. So that was kind of giving me an idea that I'm doing things right. There's like the bod pod, for example. Anyone heard of the bod pod? That sound familiar to anybody? That's supposed to be quite accurate, but that's something like £200 every time you use it. So it's not really practical, you know what I mean? And it's not that common either. So you have to travel maybe like 50 miles to go and find one that's, in your area and things like that. It's just not very practical, but it's very accurate though, but not practical.
Is that the machine that you stand in and then they?
It's water. You go into water. They call it bod pod.
Okay.
There's another one. I'm trying to remember the name of it now. It sends like rays through your body. It's not the same as the one in the gym, but it's another one. I can't remember the name of it now. But that's also very accurate. But again, it's not many places have it, so you have to kind of travel for it. So it's just not very practical, because body fat is something you want to ideally measure at least twice a month. You know what I mean? So there's also visual aids as well. So on the link that I gave you, if you don't want to do all that, you can I've taken some pictures of people with certain body fat, and you can kind of equate yourself to where you are on that list. I'm going to put a couple of more links on here that might be helpful to you. I'm just going to put my website on there.
The other thing that measures your body fat, I mean, okay, for myself, I did get a set of scales so that I can just keep a regular check on it, whether the numbers are 100% perfect or not. to a degree are irrelevant. It just lets me know that I'm staying stable and I'm not getting peaks and drops. But the other thing that lets you know your body fat is effectively your clothing. You're going to know if you fit something or not. You're going to know if you feel well or not. You're going to know if you're constantly getting colds because your body fat's too low, or if you're feeling lethargic because your body fat's too high.
What about if you lose muscle?
Losing muscle is going to be, to a degree, part of your overall training. You know, like I know when I am doing my cycling, when I'm doing my dancing, when I'm working out, my muscle stays there. But I know,
but not everybody though. Like I lost a lot of muscle when I used to do a lot of cardio, and I lost a hell of a lot of muscle. So I lost weight. I was able to fit into clothes, but I looked really bad because I lost a lot of muscle, lost a lot of fat. So what I tend to focus on is maintaining the muscle. I think it's easy to lose muscle and fat. It's easy to lose weight, but to actually maintain as much muscle as you can and just focus on losing the fat requires a lot of science. It requires getting your macronutrients right and getting your training regime right, and that's where I think where a lot of people fall short. So that's what I was saying a bit. So I was saying a bit earlier. The analogy I used to give to my clients was: imagine that you're on a sinking ship, and that ship has water or ice, and you've also got gold, and you have to throw cargo out of the boat in order to keep it buoyant. You don't want to throw away the gold. You'd rather throw away the ice. Am I right? Yeah. And it's a bit like that with losing weight. We don't want to lose the muscle, but you'd want to lose the fat. And the body, because it's adaptive, if you're just going to do loads of cardio and not much resistance training, you're not going to get your protein intake as high as it should be. You're going to lose fat and muscle. Okay. Now, if you've got more fat than muscle, you'll probably be okay. But if you're like me, and I had a lot of muscle, but I also had a lot of fat, I wanted to just strip that fat and maintain the muscle. That's where you have to look at things a little bit more carefully. You know, Sophie, do you have a question?
Yeah, so because I'm just trying to get my head around it, and I don't know if anyone else would think like this. So, if, like personally for myself, I went from being a very larger than I am now, but I did everything cardio, and it's only when I've got to the size that I'm semi-happy with is when I introduced the weight. So although I understand I may have done the damage by doing all the cardio and losing my initial muscle, but until I got to the size that I wanted to be, I wouldn't do the weights, but I will gain muscle by doing the weights.
Yeah, this is where it gets complicated because you sound like a newbie. Yeah. There are exceptions. A newbie, and we call them newbies. There are exceptions to the rule where, okay, if you're new to any kind of weight training / exercise, for around 12 to 18 months, you can actually build muscle and lose fat at the same time. Now that's something that only lasts for 18 months. After that, you know, it's a bit because it's new to you. For those 12 to 18 months, you can actually lose fat and gain muscle no matter what you do. Okay, any exercise will work. However, after that, you're going to have to adopt some kind of regime that is more cognizant with muscle growth or fat loss. So if you ever speak to a bodybuilder, they will go through phases of bulking and cutting. Okay, so bulking is when you try to grow muscle or maintain muscle. And cutting is when you try to maintain muscle but focus mainly on burning fat. But if you're experienced for, let's say, over 2 years, it's harder to do both at the same time. Is that making sense? I think you have to go on my other talk. If you go on my website and click out how to get the perfect body, I talk about that in a lot of detail, because it's not something I can cover in like 5 minutes. But yeah, if you got a moment, check it out.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because it's quite a lot to it, really, you know. But yeah, in a nutshell, if you're new to it, let's say that you haven't really trained in the past, and you just start training pretty much from tomorrow, almost anything you do will be a shock to the body, and you will actually grow muscle and lose fat for a short time. And bodybuilders used to refer to that as the honeymoon phase, because it's such a great experience. It's something I went through as well. Like when I started going to the gym, I went to the gym when I was 18. When I started going to the gym, I'm now 45. Okay, so I've been going for a while. My first year and a half, I didn't know what I was doing, but I got a six-pack by the time I was 19. Okay, then after that, I still stuck to what I was doing, but it wasn't working. By the time I was 21, it wasn't working, and I just got fatter and fatter, and I didn't understand why. So that's when after a while, when I look back now, I can understand why what was working when I was 17, 18 wasn't working when I was 20, 21. Does it make sense? Yeah. I don't know if that's confusing anybody, but as I said, I do cover it in a lot of detail in my lean gains book, and also on some of the talks that I've covered. If you go on my website on the blog page and check out the videos, I've done quite a few talks about that. So feel free to do that. Any other questions, by the way?
Yes, Lee, I wanted to ask about supplementation. I recently discovered something like amino acids. I was looking for products for hair loss, and I found that many of those products have amino acids in them. So I decided maybe it's something I should supplement internally. So can you kind of tell something about supplementation? Is it?
Yeah, I did a 2-hour talk about that last month. Supplements. Again, it's on my website. Supplement is a hello. Someone say something. Hello.
Interview or no? So I'm fully I don't understand. I'm fully vaccinated. I say if I have to be fully vaccinated to be to get an interview.
Hello, who's talking? I can't hear it. Did someone ask me a question? No. Yeah. So supplements. That's a big topic, a very big topic. In a nutshell, supplements are lower down on the priority list to diet and exercise. Okay. There are legal supplements and there are illegal supplements. The legal supplements are not going to be as effective as the illegal ones, but I'm not going to just take the illegal ones. The illegal ones tend to affect the hormones more directly. So things like steroids and growth hormone and things like that will give you very, very noticeable differences. But obviously, I'm not going to say start taking growth hormone and testosterone. The legal over-the-counter stuff will not be as effective as changing as exercising and changing your diet. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm probably just interested in a basic stuff, but
if you wanted something about hair, is it hair loss you're interested in? Then like something like
no, generally, for example, I don't eat much meat, which is a lean protein, so it's more kind of vegan diet, and I just was wondering, I don't eat dairy products, so is the thing like, do I have enough? What I actually
have enough protein. Yeah, you want roughly around 1 gram. Yeah, you want around 1 gram protein per pound on average. Now, vegans tend not to have enough protein if they are if they're doing exercise and weight training, tend to need more protein. So
is this, for example, this amino acids supplementation? Is it just something? Is it worth, or is just just drop it and buy a chicken?
Okay, so if you're vegan,
it's a choice, right?
What's your goal? Is it to gain muscle or to grow muscle or to maintain muscle?
No, just to be healthy. So to be honest, I exercise quite a lot, but for me, it's just a part of my routine, I guess. But it's more like a maintenance. Like it doesn't do anything.
Okay. So you're probably.
But I would like to take it further because I feel less and less fit. When I was ill, I dropped exercise and I returned, and I quite quickly gained. Maybe not weight. I don't weigh myself, but I have meter that I just have the, my size.
Okay.
I checked regularly my size, and you know, it's just I try to balance.
Have you heard of essential amino acids? Do you know what they are?
What? Yes,
essential amino acids. Essential amino acids are things that you can't get, you can't create. So there are certain amino acids or certain proteins that you can create without actually ingesting proteins. And then there are other proteins that you will need to acquire through diet, and they're called essential amino acids. The essential amino acids all work very differently. If your focus is on muscle growth, then you want to include an amino acid called leucine, isoleucine, and valine, or they used to refer to them as branch chain amino acids. If you don't want to focus on, so some people used to market branch chain amino acids if they're into weight training, because that would contribute towards muscle growth. However, more recently, they've marketed essential amino acids as a package. So in answer to your question, you're probably better off buying essential amino acids as a package. Okay, so if you just type in essential amino acids on Google and then just buy it as a package or as pills, and that will cover all your needs, because they're suitable for vegans as well. Things like whey protein, that they're dairy based, so they're not suitable for vegans, whereas essential amino acids are. You know what I mean? But as I cover, it's such a deep topic, I can't like just cover it in 5 minutes. So I did a talk on it a couple of months ago. If you go on my website, you could see it there.
Okay, but I understand it could be useful considering the diet. My diet is not that rich in
absolutely.
Animal protein.
Protein,
that's great.
Absolutely, because if you don't eat enough protein, you can get a lot of problems long term. So you got to make sure you get enough amino acids.
Okay, but the non-essential, that's not necessarily. I don't need it at all, actually.
Not necessarily, because you can generate that through your diet. But it depends on, like, there's certain non-essential amino acids that we tend not to eat a lot of, but you can get away with it more so than you can with the essentials, especially if you're vegan. Vegans don't eat enough protein generally. So if you come across vegan bodybuilders, they tend to take supplements, whereas non-vegan bodybuilders can get away with just eating high protein diets, meat, things like that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. You helped me a lot. Thank you.
That's okay. Kay Core, did you ask? Is Kay Core there? I think she's got her hand up.
Yeah, thank you. There's been a lot of talk about intermittent fasting. I don't know if you have anything to say on that. I've been trying it actually. I've been trying this. Was it 16/8 they call it or something? So you have the 8 hours.
That's a lean gains diet. That is.
Yeah, you got that well.
Funny you mentioned that, because my website is called leangains.co.uk, and the guy who invented the lean gains 16/8 diet, a guy called Martin Bergen, he's actually got a site called leangains.com. And a lot of people email me thinking that I'm Martin. I'm not Martin. But yeah, he basically invented that diet. And the idea is that you fast for 16 hours and you have a small feeding window. And again, there's a lot of benefits to it. You produce more BDNF, which is something I mentioned earlier. So your cognitive ability is much better. You think more sharper. You also have a more efficient immune system, because your white cells are more effective, etc. So if you're just looking at fat loss and muscle growth, it's just another diet, because it's all about cutting calories. Okay, but if you're looking at other benefits, then they tend to be the main benefits. You tend to your body works more efficiently when you fast. You can fast up.
I found it difficult because it's an 8-hour slot thing, right? So I mean, sometimes I'm up very early, so I have breakfast like, I don't know, 5:30 or 6 o'clock. And if I've got to do it within the 8 hours, and I've got the rest of the day hold free without any food, and then I was ending up waking. I'm getting better now. When I first started, I've been doing it for about 2 months now. I was ending up waking up like 3 o'clock in the morning or something, like feeling kind of hungry, like my sugar level was something.
I'm gonna put a link about intermittent fasting as well. That might help, because there's some. Have you heard of ghrelin? Who's heard of ghrelin? Anybody heard of ghrelin?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, wait a minute, what's going on here? So ghrelin is a hormone. They used to call it the hunger hormone. Okay. Now, when you fast, you produce less ghrelin. Okay, which means that you don't feel as hungry after a while. So
yeah, I noticed that. Yeah, it's really helped me because I'd be a bit greedy sometimes, you know. And I've lost about in 2 months. I've lost about 7 pounds.
Wow, that's pretty. How do you feel then? How do you are you eating less now?
Yeah, I feel great. The fact that I get fuller quicker, I don't feel bloated, and the fact that I could be quite greedy in the past. You know, I just kind of difficult for me. I just keep picking at food that I couldn't necessarily sit down and have a meal. I just kind of graze, you know, and I've stopped the grazing now, and I'm sticking to the square meals, but I'm still finding it's sometimes too early for me, you know, within the 8-hour window because I have breakfast so early.
So are you? So what I'm trying to get at is, are you focusing on taking it to the next level, whereby you cut your feeding window to, let's say, 4 hours, or do you want to stick to the 16-8, or do you want to get back to normal? Like, where are you at the moment?
I couldn't go any less than that. You know, I'm just I'm getting used to this, but what I'm noticing is that I'm not diabetic or anything, but I know that if I went a long period without food, I'd kind of start to feel a bit, foggy in the brain and kind of blurry vision. My sugar would drop and I need to eat something. That's what I'm feeling sometimes, you know, that I need to eat something.
So yeah, so that's the problem. You see, it's excellent to start off with. The problem is that at some point you're going to go through these problems. So again, something I mentioned to Sophie, I think it was, is that you want to start embracing refeeds when you start to feel like that. Refeeds and diet breaks. I always use the example of working. You know, like if you're doing a job 7 days a week, and you're not taking any breaks, you're going to be less efficient over time. Intermittent fasting, same thing. So when you start if you go back to just having literally a break from it for around 2 weeks, eat normally for 2 weeks, and then you can go back to it. If your goal is to gain muscle, you're going to find it very difficult to do so if you're intermittent fasting. However, if your gain is just to lose weight, it's a great way of losing weight.
Would you lose fat as well? Does it lose fat?
Yeah, you lose. Basically, fat loss is about calorie restriction. So when you it's just one way of dieting. You know, you're eating fewer calories because your ghrelin levels drop, so you don't feel the craving.
It's a lovely feeling. I know I don't have those anymore, and I get fuller quicker. And I just kind of almost got a loss of appetite. I'm having to kind of make myself eat anything. It's
and there's something called there's also cholecystokinin. Who's heard of that? Cholecystokinin and leptin. Sound familiar to anybody?
I've heard of leptin, yes.
Yeah. So these are all hormones involved in hormone now. In hunger. And you produce less of that, so you don't feel hungry as much. You know, and I think Wendy, you still there, Wendy? She's done it a lot. I know Wendy's done a lot.
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah,
my stomach is so much flatter. It feels really good.
Yeah, it is really good.
The size of my stomach, that's what it feels like. You know, it's great feeling on the belly. Because I used to get a lot of bloating. My bloating is gone.
Why did you say that the intermittent fasting, like you're not going to build muscle if you do that?
Because you can't build muscle if you're on a calorie deficit, unless you're a newbie.
So what if I'm not on a calorie deficit? What if I'm actually eating in those 8 hours what I'm supposed to eat?
Okay. So if you want to gain muscle and you have been training for, let's say, more than 18 months, then you're going to find it impossible to gain new muscle if you are on a calorie deficit. So they say that you have to eat probably 10% more than normal, or calorie maintenance, 10% more than calorie maintenance in order to grow new muscle. So bodybuilders, what they tend to do is they tend to bulk. Because the problem with eating more calories, obviously, is that you're going to gain some fat as well. But the good thing about eating more calories and progressing overload, lifting weights and things, is that you will actually grow new muscle. So what bodybuilders do is they tend to have phases of bulking where they gain muscle and fat, and then they'll diet down, lose the fat, but keep that new muscle. Yeah. Now, if all that doesn't matter to you, then I would say, yeah, fine, just fast, intermittent fast. But you are even in the long term, you're still going to lose a little bit of muscle long term. Yeah. It's a bit like that example I used with the boat. You got the ice and the gold. Yeah. You keep throwing out the ice, but the boat is still sinking. At some point, you might have to throw out some of the gold as well.
The thing is the intermittent fasting is for me, like, I do it all my life. It's for me natural. It's not to lose weight, and that's probably my state where I can't move my body from in any direction.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It depends on what you want. So if you're doing it for health reasons, that's fine. If you're doing it like a lot of the clients that I used to see, they used to do intermittent fasting, and then they would complain that they're not that they're losing muscle over time, or they're getting weaker over time. You know, in the beginning they were great, and over like maybe 4 or 5 months, they'd lose the muscle, and then it's a question of, okay, well, what can we do about that? We'd have to incorporate diet breaks. We have to start upping your calories.
Diet breaks. Okay, cool.
I think part of what John's saying there is you can't build muscle on an empty fuel tank, and a lot of what the bodybuilders would do. A lot of what the bodybuilders would do is they would overfill their fuel tank for a period of 6 to 8 weeks, and in that time they would work out really hard trying to build the muscle. But they know that they were overfilling their fuel tank because they needed to do that to build what they wanted. And then after a period of time, they would do fasting to try and burn off that surplus load of fat that had built up around the muscle and under the skin tissue. And they would fast while not working out for a little while or doing light workout to try and remove that fat, and then go back and repeat the cycle again to refill up, burn it, and then fast again to burn off the surplus fat that they would naturally gather.
Yeah, hit the nail on the head, exactly, 100%. So it's phases of bulking, cutting, you know, and that's something that it's not for everybody. That's the thing. I find that not everybody wants to do that. So that's why I tend not to kind of say this is what you should do. Or I always say, what is it that you actually want? What's your goal? And then we can see what's best for you. Intermittent fasting has got so many health benefits, but if you're looking at some kind of physical change, then we have to kind of like think a bit outside the box. But if you're looking at like thinking better, like just general health, then intermittent fasting is very good. You know, as I said about the BDNF, and I said about you know, feeling better with yourself, feeling more motivated, all that stuff. Intermittent fasting is great for that. It's great.
It's also whether you're developing a short-term or a long-term plan, because you're changing your lifestyle. So if you're adjusting your lifestyle to fit into that, you've got to look at what you're trying to achieve, your short-term or long-term plan.
Yeah, I mean, there's someone I know who's epileptic, you know, and there's been a lot of research saying that intermittent fasting reduces epilepsy. So he's now chronically, he's always fasting, and he's on a ketogenic diet. So he does intermittent fasting and does low carb, and that's pretty much how he survives, you know. But that's a medical thing. But if you're looking at just literally burning fat, building muscle, that kind of thing, then as I say, you've got to think a bit more than just intermittent fasting, you know. Even the guy who invented it, Martin Bergen, who has a leangains.com site, he wrote a book recently called The Lean Gains Method, and he kind of contradicts a lot of what he said, because he's come to realize now that intermittent fasting on its own is not the solution. There's a lot more to it than that. If you want to literally get ripped, you know, build muscle and lose fat, you know, then you have to kind of adjust the calories, go through bulking, cutting. You know, something that I've been going on about for 20 years. It's now only becoming more popular in recent years, you know. But yeah. Any other questions? Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I have one.
Yeah.
And I did ask in the chat.
Mary, is it?
Mary.
Oh, sorry, yeah. I haven't been looking at the chat, sorry. Yeah.
That's all right.
What's the question?
It's about the keto diet, not for weight loss or anything, you know, not doing it just to lose weight, but also for medical reasons. So I've read a few places that speak like reversing diabetes and things like that. Is this something, do you know much about?
Yeah, 100%. So you're talking about the benefits of ketogenesis in relation to treating diabetes. Is that the question?
Yeah, general health,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah. So that's all about cutting down insulin levels. Yeah. So ketogenesis is when you basically reduce the amount of carbohydrates that you consume. So it's something like 5%, isn't it? 5% carbohydrate intake. What that does is that reduces the amount of insulin release. So what happens is, you know what insulin is, by the way? Everyone know what insulin is? No?
Isn't it the amount of sugar in your blood at one given point?
Insulin is a hormone that controls how much sugar there is in the blood. So if you have too much sugar in the blood, you get more insulin released from the pancreas, okay? And the insulin takes that excess sugar into the body tissue. So it takes it into the cells of the body and into the fat tissues. So in a nutshell, let's say that let's get extreme here. Let's say that you have a whole bag of sugar, okay? You ingest a whole bag of sugar. What happens is the insulin levels will go through the roof. It will take all that sugar and it will put it into the fat tissue. So you're going to get fat, okay? Now, what happens is if your insulin levels are constantly high, then you go through something called insulin resistance, where the cells no longer recognize the insulin hormone. What that basically means is that the insulin becomes less effective at getting the sugar out of the blood and into the fat tissues. So you end up with loads and loads of sugar in the blood, and that's when you get diabetes. Now, when you cut your carbs down, so when you eat less carbohydrates, you don't release as much insulin. So when you're on a diet like the ketogenic diet, you're not eating many carbohydrates, which means that you're not going to release as much insulin. What happens then is that naturally over time, you don't have as much glucose or sugar in the blood, and then your diabetes is fixed, okay? So with the ketogenic diet is very popular for diabetics, okay? But so is intermittent fasting. So a lot of my patients used to have, but when they were diabetic, they would go intermittent fasting and they'd also go keto. So they wouldn't have much, they wouldn't have high sugar levels over a period of, let's say, 3 weeks. And their diabetes would actually go within a month, which is incredible. Does that answer your question, Mary?
Yeah.
Am I confusing you?
No, it does. It answers it.
Yeah. Okay.
It just confirms what I thought. What I'd read, but I just wanted to double check.
Yeah, there's other ways of treating diabetes, by the way, you know, but that's become more popular in recent years, you know. Any other questions? I think Kay, did you have your hand? Oh, sorry, Sophie, you got your hand raised.
Yeah, it was just basically asking because someone was talking about the fasting effect, and then obviously I follow pretty much the keto diet. So they're the same thing, aren't they? It's the buzz you get from not eating the sluggish foods that's holding you back. It's basically the same, isn't it?
So what's the question? Sorry.
So someone was talking about the effects that they've noticed through fasting. So less sluggish, less hungry, like less need to go and get something that would be like a snack in the same. And I'm saying
right.
with the keto, it's the same really, but obviously it's just following two different diets, isn't it?
It is exactly. You know, that's why a lot of people recommend intermittent fasting and ketogenic diets together. You know, for that
I've
reason.
not personally done the fasting, but since being on a keto diet, I physically can't eat until 2 o'clock. Like I can't put anything in, like because I feel so full up. Is that
that's to do with the hunger hormones? That's to do with the hunger hormones, the ghrelin.
Is that the leptin one you said about?
Yeah, leptin it gets so confusing. But basically, leptin is what we call a regulator hormone. So what that basically means is, I use the analogy of a fuel gorge on a car. So you know, like when you're driving, you know, a few months ago we had that fuel shortage. Remember that?
Yeah.
Remember that? When we had a fuel shortage.
Yeah.
And I remember it really well because I was literally driving on an empty tank, and I remember I was really careful how fast I was driving because I wasn't sure when I'm going to get my next petrol. Okay, so I was driving really slowly, and I use that analogy with leptin because leptin is a bit like a fuel gorge. The leptin will say to the body, look, we're not eating a lot of food here. So when you're fasting or when you're on keto, your leptin levels become more sensitive. So basically, it's like a protective mechanism. And leptin tries to slow down the metabolism. It makes you feel less hungry because it's trying to regulate things a little bit. Oh, no, sorry, actually it makes you more hungry. Sorry, it makes you more hungry because what it's doing is sending signals to the brain to say that there's not enough calories coming in. We need to eat more calories. Just like when a when it says when the fuel gauge says empty, then you know that you're going to fill the tank. So leptin says, okay, we've got to slow down the metabolic process. We've got to burn fewer calories because there's not a lot of calories are coming in because Sophie's fasting or Sophie's not eating as many calories as she was before. So the downside with the keto diet and with intermittent fasting is that unfortunately your metabolic rate will drop. You'll burn fewer calories over time. You see, so every so often you're going to have to do a refeed, okay, in order to boost that leptin response. It's a bit like filling a petrol tank, put it that way. Once you fill your petrol tank, then you can drive faster, okay? Just like once you start eating more calories again, even if it's just for a couple of weeks, then you can burn more calories. And that's what you really want. You want your body to burn more calories. So the downside with all this intermittent fasting and ketogenesis is that you will burn fewer calories. And that's a lot of people don't realize that. And you will start to lose muscle over time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't know if you experience it. And also, I don't know, do you lift heavy weights, Sophie, at the moment?
Yeah, I do.
Do you find it harder? Do you find it harder to lift heavy weights when you're doing keto for a long time? Or do you find it just as easy as it was before?
It's really tricky because I have been following the 1-to-1 diet, and then I've introduced having a meal again, but I've been doing that now since the first lockdown. So, and I only introduced the weights in that time. So because I didn't do the weights before when I was clean eating or just eating my bad habits, I don't have a comparison because for me, I only started the weights when I lost the weight, because I was 19.5 stone, a size 22, and I wouldn't pick up the weight because I physically couldn't. Like I couldn't get down to pick it up. But now I can. I'm doing it. So I have no comparison.
No, okay, because you're kind of like a newbie at the moment. That's why. So you probably want.
But when you say newbie, I've been working out for like 3 years now. So
you haven't been lifting weights for 3 years, though. So that's quite new. Yeah,
since the lot. 18 months.
You could technically be a newbie and go to the gym 15 years, but you may not be. You'll be new to weight training, like lifting heavier weights, resistance training. So there were a few obese clients I used to have who've been training all the time. Went to the gym 5 days a week, but they looked the same and they were still obese. But what they were doing was counterproductive. They were doing fad diets and they were just doing cardio. So they weren't really challenging their muscles. And what they did for the first year was start lifting weights, but still diet. And they were able to grow muscle during that year because it was a shock to the system. After that, it became more challenging. So I suspect that you're kind of in that new phase. I personally can't do ketogenic diet and lift heavy weights for more than maybe for the first 2 weeks. After that, it's a real struggle because I have to eat more to gain the muscle. You know what I mean? But when I started, it wasn't a challenge because it was such a shock to the system. That makes sense.
Yeah, I suppose for me, because I'm only doing PT once a week, I'm only lifting weights once a week. Whereas if I then put it into my routine a bit more, I'd probably experience what you're explaining because I'd be doing weights a lot more.
Also, exactly. Sophie, how long have you been in the transition of going from doing just cardio to now including weights?
So I've been doing cardio for the last 3-4 years solid, and then I've been since the lockdown, well, since COVID started. That's when I started doing weights. So a while now, but I haven't got the confidence to do the weights in the gym. So I only do the weights on a Friday when I see my PT. So it's only every Friday since the pandemic started that I've done weights.
Okay.
I'm only going to speak from my personal work experience that if the gaps are so great, as in only once a week, you may not be physically or mentally appreciating the growth as much. And when you can step it up, then your body, your mind, and your awareness will also step up to another level.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. It's like adaptation, isn't it? Yeah.
I work with my son who is autistic, and I can only think about the same comparisons that anything that I'm working on with him, if I'm not doing it regularly, it doesn't show the growth. If I step it up to another level where it gets drummed so deeply into his mind, body, and soul, then I get the results.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. That's helpful. Absolutely,
yeah. And any other input? Any questions?
I'm sorry, I got to go now. So
it's wonderful meeting you, Brett. Lovely meeting you. Thank you, Brett.
Yeah.
Take care. Bye. Okay, so so how did you? Was it through Meetup that you came on here? Was it
myself?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Okay, yeah. So what? Which one was it? Was it the lose weight, feel great one? Or...
get your butt to the gym, because although I go to the gym 5 days a week, I find it so hard some of the days. So I wanted the motivation side of it.
Okay, no, what it is I've got 4 meetup groups, you see. So I wasn't sure which one it was. But yeah, what I do is I do these talks. I do talks around roughly once a month. Okay. So what I tend to do is I tend to record a lot of them and I put them on my site. So there's quite a lot of topics that we can cover. I've got one that's going to be focusing on veganism coming up in, I think, April. We've got another one that's going to be talking about hormones, and we've got another one about muscle growth and things like that. So it's something that I want to do quite regularly. You seem to be quite interested in this stuff, so it's something that I'd like to keep in touch with about.
Yeah, definitely.
That's good. Yeah. But feel free to follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Lean Gains UK.
Sorry, say that again.
So if you go to my website, leangains.co.uk, it's got all my social media links on there. So you can follow me there.
And have you listed that in the chat?
Yeah, let me put it in again. Actually, I'll put my website. Yeah. leangains.co.uk. Sure. Yeah. Any questions? Is everyone happy?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay. So wonderful meeting you all. I'm going to call that a day now. So
thank you, Jonathan.
Yeah. Oh, let me put my email address on here as well. If anyone's got any questions, you can just shout me. Okay. There you go. Okay, you got that, everyone?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, thank you. Hope to see you again.
Take care.
Yeah. Bye-bye.